Ladies and gentlemen, we just got the high sign from FCAT back there staffing the board, saying this is being broadcast live as a regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Board of Selectmen. If we could call it to order at 7 o'clock, actually. The timepiece has been adapted, meaning it has a battery, and the times are pretty darn close. Tonight, we'd like to start off with a short pause and a remembrance, and Tom has a note in front of him.
First, over the latter part of last week, Walter Blunas Sr. passed away. Walter lived down on Old Amherst Road by the intersection of Old Amherst and Russell Street. He goes back to the time in our town where very few people actually did one thing when they volunteered. They usually volunteered for a lot of things. And besides Walter being our oldest veteran in the town, Walter served in the Second World War with the United States Navy, and you may have seen him this year in our Memorial Day parade in the Model A, unfortunately with a top up, and he had promised that he was going to ride this year with the top down. But Walter was also a member of the Sunderland Fire Department and the police department, which was not an unusual thing 30 years ago or longer. So we would like to pass our thoughts on to Jim, his wife Sandy, and his brother Walter, and his wife, who live up in Greenfield, on their passing their dear father-in-law and father. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, Tom. You want to weigh anything else while we've got it?
I will do this twice. I'll do it at the end also, but Monday is St. Patrick's Day, and it's not going to be the Blarney blowout at the senior center. It's going to be at the senior.
Pretty rowdy over there. I don't know.
Auto luck.
The senior center. The senior center
Funny.
is going to have what they call the Pot o' Luck
I love it.
luncheon, and that's going to be held March 17th. It's going to be starting at 10:45. So the Pot o' Luck luncheon at the senior center, they are going to have an Irish folk singer and storyteller by the name of Tim Van Egmond, and he's going to be doing songs and stories. And if you'd like to attend, they are requesting that you RSVP to either 665-2141 or to 665-9508. So if you'd like to participate in some songs and stories of St. Patrick's Day at the Senior Center, it'll be this coming Monday, March 17th at 10:45, and please give them a call over there. And I'll say that later on also.
Super. Thanks so much, Tom. So tonight we're going to have a handful of things on our agenda that include a solar project update. Beth Greenblatt is in gracing our presence tonight. We're going to talk to Chief Ahern about some street naming, renaming, and then a whole host of other things, including equipment list, SCEMS update, not so much in the director, but also some of our IMA responsibilities. That's intermunicipal agreement, our asset allocation, what those lists look like, and then a discussion maybe about potential exploration of joint fire service with other communities. We have some board updates, town administrator updates. We're in town meeting season, as you know. We've been talking about this calendar, and as we all know, time marches on. So tonight we'll revisit the calendar, and then a couple of policy reviews, in particular around Cory checks and food carts. Anybody's seen or heard or fed from them. It's nice that the town has begun the framework development for its food carts. But first up with us tonight, we're going to talk about our solar project. As you all know, over a 20-month period now, the town has developed, encouraged input, worked with consultants, worked with utilities, and has developed two projects. And we are going to get our update tonight about the current status of those projects and opportunities for the town inside those projects. So with that said, I'm going to ask Beth, who almost had dinner on her way here tonight, to go through the presentation. Thanks so much for coming out, Beth. I know we tried last week via the phone, but at the point we're at in the project right now, and the kind of confluence of issues, it's more important that you're here with us.
And it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me tonight. I wish I could come here tonight and tell you that both arrays have been fully interconnected and the meter is spinning backwards, but alas, that is not the case. What I did was put together this short presentation, and I'll zoom through it because I know you folks have already had an opportunity to look through it. I want to make sure I can answer your questions so that we can get to the next step. But in short, as you know, the town has executed power purchase and lease agreements with Broadway Renewable Strategies to build 2 arrays, one at the Public Safety Complex and the other at Sunderland Elementary School. All the permits were secured, the interconnection services agreement with Western Mass Electric has been executed, net metering cap allocation the reservation has been secured and paid for, and the projects, both of them, have received SREC 1 certification, which is really important because that adds to the value. So Broadway Renewable Strategies is for lack of a better term, is a sister company to Broadway Electrical Company. They had some common ownership, but they were separate entities. Broadway Renewable Strategies relied on Broadway Electrical for all staffing, contracting, and electrical work. Broadway announced in mid-January, as you know, that they were engaging in an orderly shutdown of operations, Broadway Electrical Company. As a result of that, Broadway Renewable Strategies, unfortunately, also suffered from the same shutdown obligation. The Tron Group was engaged, it's a liquidation firm, for lack of a better term, to divest the assets of Broadway, including Broadway Renewable Strategies, and any contracts of both companies. The proceeds were to be used to pay off creditors, of which Sunderland is one. Broadway Renewable Strategies took their portfolio as part of this divestiture, and the Tron Group segmented it into 3 different buckets. The first were projects and commercial operations that they sold off to be maintained. The second were projects that were in the pipeline but not under contract, and those are our SREC 2 projects, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then the third are projects under contract but not yet constructed. Those are the SREC 1 projects, of which there are 7 of them. Sunderland has 2, and a couple of my clients have some of the other ones. Sunderland's 2 projects, as I mentioned, fall into Category 3 above. So some of the critical milestones for SREC 1 projects. In order to retain their certifications, projects had to be built by last December 31st, 2013. In order to retain their certification, DOER made an exception and allowed for an extension through June 30th of 2014, provided the developers could demonstrate that they either have spent 50% of the construction costs on the project, or they are under contract to do so. So Broadway Renewable Strategies engaged in a contract for the construction with Broadway Electrical Company, and as a result, they were able to retain their SREC 1 certification. It was their intent to hit the ground running starting the beginning of 2013 with some civil work and ordering all of the equipment that was necessary. As I mentioned, the projects, in order to maintain their SREC certification, needed to be in commercial operation by June 30th, 2014. There are some limited exceptions to that hard and fast deadline, and they're very focused on either issues related to utility interconnections that are the responsibility of Western Mass Electric Company, or very, very specific defined force majeure conditions that impact the user, in this case Sunderland, which is
including work stoppage,
including work
which would be the qualified event.
Exactly. So the Tron Group entered into, initially they were looking at someone to partner with Broadway. That didn't seem to be a successful event for them. They ultimately entered into a letter of intent with ENRG Holdings LLC to do due diligence on the 7 SREC 1 projects, of which Sunderland has 2. E-Energy Holdings has made representation to me, and I heard today from the Tron Group, that they are interested in purchasing the commitments and obligations of the contracts with the town of Sunderland, and believe that they can get these projects built by the deadline, although they will ask the town to support them in seeking an extension. And they would assume all of the contract obligations, including the power purchase agreement, the lease agreement, the escrow, decommissioning agreement, and the pilot agreement. So who are these guys? E-Energy Holdings is a Boston-based asset manager developer, primarily in the real estate sector, and they are affiliated with the Abbott Real Estate Development LLC. In fact, they are, Jim McAuliffe is the owner of both and CEO. E-Energy Holdings was established for the purpose of renewable generation in Massachusetts in June 2013. They are involved in the acquisition, construction, operation, and sale of renewable energy, but primarily in New Jersey. State Electric Corporation is a Massachusetts-based company organized in 1998. They are DCAM certified in the electrical and alarm systems areas. They're a full-service electric construction company and have made representation that they have been involved in the renewable energy space. And they have some project references, particularly two roof-mounted projects at two Walmart's locations in Massachusetts. So-
Anything out in this side of the state?
No.
And they're doing,
Central Mass, Lancaster, I think.
they're like the electrical contracting arm for these guys, right?
They are the electrical contracting arm and will be the EPC, the construction arm
Okay.
for the project. That's what they're proposing. CTL Capital is a New York-based financier for these projects. They were formed in 1998, again, to provide mainly public-private project support for lease securitization, asset securitization, and private placements. They're the money people. I found no known or reported experience in the renewable energy space, but I'm not sure that as a lender it's as critical. You would expect that they would do their proper due diligence on the economics of these projects. CTL Capital has committed to fund these projects, both the SREC 1 and SREC 2 projects under any offering made by ENRG. So what are Sunderland's options and considerations? Accept the assignment provisions in the agreement. That's one option. Support further assignments, including any work related or associated with the interconnection with Western Mass Electric and the town special permit. And by support, just be supportive of. There's no specific work requirement. Submit a request for construction timeline extension to DOER. I did talk to DOER. They indicated, as Margaret had mentioned, that they would consider a request for an extension under the force majeure provision as a work stoppage, as insofar as it's impacting the town. They're probably not going to get a long-term extension. My guess is it will be less than 60 days. I anticipate that if the town does choose to move forward, the projects would be in commercial operation and interconnected during the third quarter of this calendar year. The alternative is reject the assignment provision. You have that ability, and terminate the contracts with Broadway Renewable Strategies LLC. ENRG has indicated to me that they are willing to buy out the project LLCs and look at whatever contracting structure assures that the town maintains its requirements under the procurement laws. Implications of a termination, and my goal today is just to give you a sense of what would happen if you decided to terminate. The SREC 1 certification and net metering cap allocations, reservations would be forfeited at this time. Doesn't mean you can't apply again and get the same cap allocation for net metering, and we can talk about that. The economics for the new projects would be impacted by a reduced SREC benefit. Under the SREC 1 program, for every megawatt hour of solar generation, one solar renewable energy credit was generated. So it was a one-for-one relationship. under the SREC 2 program, which is less rich, if you will, less beneficial to the end user, and it's really designed, as most incentive programs are designed, to work through bringing down the cost of these types of assets and removing these financial incentives to allow these types of assets to operate without government financial intervention. So in this case, as you know, the net metering benefits are ratepayer-funded dollars, if you will. The SREC certification are also ultimately, SREC benefits are also ultimately ratepayer-funded incentives because they're market activities that lead to obligations being met by electric companies and other load-serving entities in the Commonwealth. So under SREC 2, the ground-mounted arrays with behind-the-meter installations, such as the ones we're proposing, where at least 67% of the generation is consumed on-site. So we could not export more than 33% of the generation to facilitate credits in other buildings in the town.
Right.
We weren't going to do that at the public safety complex, but we were going to be exporting a significant amount at the elementary school. Would realize 10% fewer SRECs. So there would be an economic impact on the revenue stream that the developer sees to offset their financing costs. Likely, they would come back for a renegotiation on price. And in fact, if the town rejected the assignment, the relationship is over and you would likely need to go back out to bid. The solar PV array at the elementary school would also likely need to be reduced because it's exporting so much more that's going to the benefit of other facilities in the towns. So how do you protect yourself? If you chose to move forward, how does the town protect itself from risk? There are protections in the contract for default and many, many other protections that town council and we negotiated with Broadway. There's a bonding requirement, payment and performance bonds during construction. There's also a fully funded upfront escrow account that needs to be funded at 125% of the expected decommissioning amount defined by Broadway to remove the system. So during construction, you're covered by bonds. After construction, you're covered by an escrow agreement. Should they walk away or not finish, you could bring the property back to its original condition. The behind-the-meter installations will require witness tests and full authorization by WMECO for interconnection, so you know, despite the fact that State Electric is a state, a well-respected electrical contracting firm, you know that Western Mass Electric is not going to allow anything to interconnect into its facilities until they feel it's safe. And we would conduct reference checks very quickly to make sure that what they say they can do, they can in fact do as a team. So I wish I could tell you they boast an enormous portfolio of projects. They don't. They have some experience. They welcome the opportunity to come in and meet with you folks and present their qualifications directly and talk about any issues or concerns you may have with them as a team. And they sort of stand ready to hit the ground running because June 30th is literally just around the
Fast
corner.
approaching.
So that's pretty much all I have, and I'm happy to take some questions.
David, Tom?
My question is to David.
Yeah.
If you saw this company was one of the original 3 or 4, how would you score them?
Well, based on the criteria we used, I mean, one of the reasons we picked Broadway was because of their historical experience.
Absolutely.
This is tough because, well, one of the questions I had too is there still an option to like buy out at the end of the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
100% of the provisions and the opportunities in the contract would be adopted, assigned to the new entity.
But then you look at the other side, and you if we lose the SREC one and everything, you know, it's kind of like we're back to the drawing board in a way, in a big way. Sort of caught between the old rock and a hard place, Scylla and Carbotus kind of thing here. But if you were just looking at it strictly, like in other words, if they were in our pool, I don't know where they, you know, it's hard to say because they haven't done a presentation too, but if you're just looking on paper, they wouldn't be at the top of the list probably. But,
Oh, I'm trying to remember what the criteria, we had some really strict criteria with regard to
did.
experience, and I do believe there was a requirement that they had a history of solar projects
Right.
in Massachusetts,
Correct.
and I'm just thinking, one of the other things
state
too
has
was,
two of them.
2 of them.
State has two smaller roof-mounted installations. NRG in New Jersey has about 20 megawatts under contract.
do they do any ground stuff at all, or?
I have put together today and I'm happy to share with you, a list of information I would like from them
Okay,
in order to help you folks do proper due diligence.
yeah, that would help.
And they're working toward that effort. I think,
Okay.
you know, their misunderstanding from the liquidation agent was that if they're willing to take the assignment is made. They didn't realize that they needed to come in and allow you to equally do your proper due diligence as they did theirs.
Right,
So they have now learned that that is in fact the case, and they will, you know, facilitate, get us whatever information we ask, and they've also indicated that, you know, they understand that we'd want to do reference checks. The difficulty, and it's equally as hard for me to say this, but the difficulty is whatever we do, we need to move quickly
I know,
because of the
that's-
June 30th deadline, which is not to pressure the town. I'm just here to give you information.
Can I ask a question? What happens to ENRG's bundled project assignments if Sunderland terminates? What happens? What would you think happens?
I don't think anything happens because they're actually proposing to buy the individual project LLCs. So as you know, Sunderland engaged in two separate contracts
Right.
with Broadway. Both of them were independent LLCs.
like per project essentially.
Yes, it's Sunderland Elementary School, Sunderland Solar Elementary School LLC or something.
They're, you know what I was thinking too, one of the things that we liked about Broadway too is that their, let's say their support was local in that sense. Do these guys have anything local, you know, or,
State is headquartered out of Bedford, Mass,
okay,
so they're not,
in the state,
yeah, they're in the
Just
state.
down Route 2.
yeah.
And Broadway's team, for lack of a better, was really out of Boston. They
Yeah.
did have an operations person, Carter
Right,
Wall,
over
who lives in Leverett,
Right,
but worked out of the Boston office. She spent most of her time in Eastern Mass.
okay, all right,
And she was a tremendous asset. And this is a difficult situation, and really, the town is faced with a business decision. Do we terminate? And quite frankly, I'm not sure you would actually need to start over. You could technically, I believe, and we could confirm with DOER, move to the second highly ranked firm and start negotiations with them. However, that would absolutely be an SREC 2 project.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
And they'd be highly interested in this project. They've already indicated an interest in this project.
And I guess that's my other question. So the agent for Broadway that has helped with this organizational restructuring and is going to be selling off the projects, they would give no consideration to another assignee, correct?
They indicated if we didn't accept this, they would certainly be willing to negotiate with another entity. I think the difficult part is there's not a lot of time. Equipment needs to be ordered, even with a 30 to 45-day extension, which maybe is what we'll get. There's some civil work, there's equipment that needs to be ordered, all the installation, and then Wamiko's interconnection. The interconnection can happen after June 30th, but the facility
Bulk
needs
of
to
the
be in
work's
commercial
gonna be done.
operation. Correct. So if we were in November, we might be looking at some other alternatives. Now it's really, do we move forward or do we terminate?
Tom, you want to follow up?
To me, it's I mean, we went through a pretty detailed process. And now we've taken the process and we've thrown the we haven't, but in effect that we're gonna say, well, all that work that we did in the beginning doesn't count.
Sure.
Now we're gonna try to make everything now, someone that has no experience with ground mount is gonna have to build it, or not only that, but have the financial resources to buy the equipment. We don't know what kind of equipment we're getting. They could be pulling it down from some place that went out of business, right?
No, actually, the equipment is specified in the contract, and any changes to that equipment will negate their interconnection services agreement with Western Mass Electric. So they cannot change the inverters. They could change the panels, they cannot
Sure, they
change the
could-
inverters.
They could go up to Devon's and take some panels that had been partially constructed by Green Mountain Power or whatever that was in Devon's and throw some inefficient things in there so we're not getting the kind of return. I mean, how do we know what kind of return we're gonna get? We haven't dealt with these people. And then what is there, at that point, we have the financial, I mean, there's more financial responsibility on us than on them, I think.
Well, they're the owner, they'll be responsible for making their pilot and lease payments to the town. To the extent there's any shortfall of production, that doesn't change their obligation for lease or pilot payments. So those benefits, we sort of look at it as it's a three-legged stool: pilot, lease, and net metering. Pilot and lease are non-negotiable, non-changeable. They are
That's in the
contractually
contract.
agreed upon. The net metering benefit is, as we all know, going to change every 6 months because the utility tariff will change. But if they generate less, their fixed costs stay fixed, and their variable benefits they get, they would get less benefits, so less revenue. So it's in their best interest to put in better equipment that's reliable so that they can generate the revenue and pay off their lender,
And that goes for really, I guess, no matter who
no matter who did it.
the firm is.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I'm just a little concerned with the fact that they don't have any ground mount experience and their lender doesn't have any experience in that.
So I don't know if they
But-
have, and I don't know if they have ground mounted experience. It's a question that, I'm hoping they'll give us information. There were projects in New Jersey. It's hard to know what they were. They were probably a lot of rooftops, but it's a fair question to ask their experience with ground mounts.
Just because, it can, I mean, generally there's only like pile driven and the concrete platforms, but still, it's a little different from,
And they have very specific requirements and obligations from the planning board that they must maintain.
right,
They must meet the obligations of the planning board.
the setbacks and screening and everything.
Exactly.
So effectively, what's going on is that our primary contact and our primary contract partner is going out of business.
Yep.
And their contracts and obligations are being brought up by a consortium of sorts. It's not Beth Greenblatt Co.
Right.
It's money from New York, it's, a real estate holding company, and let's make no mistakes or make no misconceptions about this. They're chasing SRECs. They have no interest in real estate.
Right.
That's just reality.
Right.
Money equals SRECs. That's why it's still attractive.
And
That's the
people-
only reason it's still attractive. The position that the board is put in is that the groundwork that was laid by the town, developing consensus, developing size, developing location, now with one partner removed, becomes who's our next partner? When E-Energy goes away, or they sell it to Morgan Stanley Company, or Toronto Dominion, or Northeast Utilities, or Beth Greenblatt Co.
Unlikely.
Not that that would, but
That
still.
one would be-
Unlikely.
That one would be okay.
That one I
Unlikely.
live with that one.
That's
would
an
be
easy
okay.
one,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And from the towns, we're talking about a piece of infrastructure here that's designed to run in service for over 20 years.
Right?
Correct.
So we're talking about a long-term relationship.
Well, yeah.
You know, there's gotta be there has to be a warm and fuzzy component to any good relationship. There's always a little struggle, but there's always a little bit of warm and fuzzy. You're gonna come out at the end, you know, still recognizing you're both professional and you protected both the interests, in our case, of the town, and in the investor's case, or the constructor's case, or the school's case, the land, the return, the whatever.
All of it, sure.
And so that, right now, all in the air, set against a backdrop of June 30th, is really untenable in a lot of ways. From my perspective, as an elected official, and someone who's associated with projects of this size and scope. So, we have terminate, renegotiate, rebid, redo, right? Redo.
Terminate, assign, terminate, and if terminate, make a decision, do you want to start
wanna
all
do
over
it again?
again?
Right.
Or do you want to go to the number 2 firm
Right.
from the selection committee?
I'm
Right.
trying to remember how much difference there was between the rating of number 1 and number 2.
I think
It was
that's-
very close.
very
I was
close.
gonna say, I don't think it was much.
No, it was very close, and I think Broadway had the edge because it was doing it from start to finish. It was gonna do all the prep
Yes.
work, the oversight, the construction, just start to finish.
I think one thing this teaches us, though, is that no matter how warm and fuzzy you get with somebody, they could disappear in an instant,
Oh, yeah.
based on the corporate whim.
I think that we said that right from the beginning, and I think that's why we thought the contract protected us the greatest.
Right.
But we all
Right.
kind of thought it was gonna get built.
We did.
Yes,
Right.
That's the difference.
right, because at least you do have the contract protection there,
Right.
but, you know, technically, if a company goes, you know, you contract with a company and then they go belly up for some reason, you're still left in Chapter 11 proceedings,
Sure,
you know.
and there's an
then-
asset there.
Right, exactly,
And
so,
sadly, you know, Broadway was a 75-year-old company. We felt pretty confident that
right.
they were in a good position.
So it's
Oh.
almost like you have to sort of put that piece aside and say, you know, anybody could disappear, you know, in terms of corporate entities.
If the town decided to terminate and begin negotiation with the second entity or go back out to bid, because these assets are going to be backfeeding the meter, they fall into a different bucket than if they were directly net metered, like if we were on your landfill.
Right.
And that's good. We're only losing 10% of the SRECs as opposed to 20 or 30% of the SRECs. So how significantly different will the economics be? And I guess is the first question,
Right.
which we don't know. And then the second question is, can we transfer a lot of the work that's been done by Broadway
Over to them.
over to the new entity with respect to the design, with respect to the interconnection services agreement, with respect to the special permit, which I understand stays with the property. So there may be a lot of work that's been done that's transferable,
Right.
that
so
we could
don't-
certainly research if that was something that you guys were interested in. Technically, you're a creditor. That may be
Right.
part of your negotiation to relieve them of any liability.
Is there any way that we could find out within a reasonable time frame from the runner-up what a financial package would look like? So that we could have that to make a decision and weigh it against, you know, this E-Energy group, you know what I mean? So you'd say, all right, we kind of know where we are financially with this group, but trying to vet them out, and then, you know, if you could compare that to and maybe not, I don't, you know.
I guess I would suggest two things. If the takeaway from tonight's meeting is that the town is not comfortable with the assignment because of the work that's been done to properly vet, and because you're not comfortable with the experience of the potential S&E, and you charged me with going to the second highly, you know,
The other guy.
advantageous
Yeah.
firm, which was the sort of the consortium of Kearsarge Energy, Fishbach and Moore, and IESI, all local firms.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I sent them a copy of the contract,
Okay,
and I got back, I sent it to them at 8 o'clock at night, I got back at 7:30 the next morning, yes, we're interested. Now,
Okay.
yes, we're interested in buying out the LLC, and/or yes, we're interested in pursuing
Right.
the project under an SREC 2. I didn't get into a lot of details because it wasn't mine to sell.
Sure.
But that's certainly a conversation that I'm happy to have with them, and quite frankly, if they want to, if your answer to the assignment is no, anything that the Tron Group can get on these projects is better than zero. So they may be willing to quickly engage in a discussion with Fishbach and Moore.
But if you don't, then you're back to SREC 2, and we
Yep.
have less potential.
Right, the value of it
Right.
drops.
Although, again, with all the work that's been done, there may be some lower development costs. So maybe at the end of the day, it would be an offset against fewer SRECs. Don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's a question that we would certainly push back, wanting to get,
Sure.
at minimum, the same benefits.
Just trying to think if we can get as much information
Well, there's a
to make
couple
our
of,
decision.
there's a couple of deep in the weeds questions that have to be asked. One is, you know, if Broadway LLC continues on this trajectory and they're picked up by holding company X, you know, the intertie agreement is originally with Project Sunderland Elementary Project X. Our liability to that project is what? That's a deep in the weeds question. Do we even have a relationship with a defunct company? Is another deep in the weeds question.
Well, there are assignment provisions, and there are provisions in the contract that, in the event of them sort of going under.
Yeah.
So that, it's really a question for town council.
Sure.
But I think right now, the response from the town is, are we willing to, because we have the ability to accept or reject the assignment. Are we willing to accept the assignment?
So to me, it's easy choice. Right? If you want to maximize your return, just you wait till they have the answers that Beth had asked
Right.
today.
Yeah,
See what their response is.
Right,
And if they come
then you
back
stick
with
with
good
SREC
response.
1.
Right.
But if you want to maximize return for the project being on town land, that's your only thing you can do.
Yeah, pick it up in the current terms, because if we go about and renegotiate, not only is their work redeveloping those proposals, but also another category of that program, that's right too.
Right, and it's not as financially,
So are you folks charging me with contacting the other firm, asking them two questions? One, are you interested in acquiring the project LLCs under the existing terms and conditions and positioning yourself to get it built by the required deadlines with any minimal extensions we may get? And two, if the answer is yes to that, I'm not sure I'd even ask the second question, and except it will give you more time. Would you be interested in constructing these projects under SREC 2, and what would the difference be in the economics?
I think, Beth, I think in hearing that, just the way it was presented, by putting the SREC 2 option out there without necessarily a deadline, the sense of urgency would go away.
Yeah, exactly. We would need to know right
Like,
away.
listen, here's a project that was vetted, 2 projects that were vetted, X amount of generation, engineering work is done, intertie agreements are done, we're
Right.
ready to go. Who wants to buy and build this project? Because it really is buy and build. You're talking
Oh, yeah.
essentially about,
Exactly.
you're essentially talking about buying a company right now.
Buying the LLC.
Exactly right.
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 And the
That's just
interconnect takes
reality.
a while,
So-
too.
Moving
It's
on.
like-
Well, the interconnect, my guess is, they'll still need to do some additional engineering,
Yep.
but these are pretty straightforward projects because they're both behind the meter, and Western Mass Electric had very specific requirements, so they're pretty straightforward from a utility perspective. Western Mass Electric has indicated to me that if there is a change in the interconnecting party, and it's only the name and nothing else,
The project is the project.
then the project is the project,
Right.
and they would want an explanation in writing, but they would make that change. And we would then be able to do the same with the system of assurance for a cap allocation. They might still need to do some other civil engineering work, just to make sure, which I would be happy to hear if they would do that. But if they would buy the project LLCs with all of the requirements and obligations in the contracts, then, again, the town is going to its second most favorable firm, but getting the same ultimate result.
Yes, I'm hearing some consensus across the table about staying inside the SREC one, the current project, without having to go back and revisit, redevelop, rebid. If this is essentially an LLC transfer, that if we were to charge you with something tonight, and maybe it is charging you with something tonight, it would be to continue on the path with E, N, or G, et cetera, and then the fallback being the second candidate in the selection process.
Right.
But really focus on the fact the project has to be the project,
So,
right? The project's got to be the project.
so continuing on with ENRG would mean accepting the assignment, voting to accept the assignment, and literally moving down the path with them in a very quick timeline.
They're money people. They want it quick.
Well, they need to order the equipment, and right now,
They
there's
have
so much that
their
is on
deadlines.
order because of the June 30th deadline, that the lead times are tight. So they need to hit, we're in March, they need to hit the ground running, and if they don't hit the ground running, they'll never get built, and they will lose their
So
SRECs.
what's the delay with respect to transfer, the corporate transfer, LLC transfer? There's gotta be lawyers involved in that, right? You know there's,
Oh,
there's
yes.
there's gonna
A
at least
lot.
be 2 meetings associated with that.
So I don't know, but I presume right now, they have made a formal offer to the liquidation agent
Right.
to buy the project LLCs for some price.
Right.
Don't know what that is. They now understand that they can buy the project LLCs if they want, but there is no guarantee they're gonna get an assignment.
Right.
So they are waiting to hear from the municipalities who hold the assignment key in their hands as to whether or not that assignment is forthcoming. If it's forthcoming, they will go ahead with the acquisition and make those transferred.
As
If
soon
it's
as
not,
they answer the questions.
Right.
These questions, yeah, these
I had a question,
questions.
though, I'm just wondering.
And these have been forwarded to ENRG?
Yeah, that's the homework.
Yes.
And
So,
you gave them how long to answer?
ASAP.
How about next Monday for our meeting?
They're working on them now, so they definitely, in fact, two things. I encourage them to be prepared, and they're anxious to come and meet with you guys. We are also meeting with them and the towns of Lee and Lennox, because they're in the same situation,
Right.
on Wednesdays.
Okay.
You're welcome to join in on that meeting if you're interested in attending. But they are willing to come out and meet directly with you folks and make a presentation.
So how about that homework complete for next Monday and we vote?
We have this in hand by Friday.
Yep.
So that you have over the weekend to review it. And there's a meeting on there'll be a selectmen's meeting on Monday where they would come in and present, or no?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Pretty,
And in the
you know,
meantime, do you want me to,
trial balloon.
Did you say they would come in
Yeah.
and present or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bring them in.
Okay.
Just have one
That's
quick
not-
question
Yeah,
along
sure.
the trial
There's
balloon
a-
path.
Right?
There's another appointment.
Why wouldn't
as
you
well.
bring them in? Makes perfect sense to bring
Oh,
them
we
in.
definitely
So it's
should.
not just, you
Th-
know,
There's no way they're getting,
3 guys in
I-
Bugattis show up,
yeah,
all with New York plates.
yep,
They're the money guys.
yep.
so, one thing I apologize that I neglected to say by accident. One of the key participants or players on the state electric team is a gentleman by the name of Dan Griffin, who was the vice president of operations for Broadway Electrical, Broadway Renewable Strategies. He was responsible for constructing all of the solar projects for Broadway. They all fell under his,
So they hired him.
they hired him. They actually hired him before they even indicated, demonstrated an interest in buying out the projects.
That was,
So to me, there's one tiny little piece of continuity that's,
right.
makes me feel a little bit better.
Appreciate that.
When, in terms of buying the assets, was it the E-Tron Group or whatever it was, they're the liquidators.
Tron, yeah.
Tron, yeah, E-Tron.
Throw a disc.
Or get
Throw a
the
disc
ENRG,
right there.
Like normally you'll get a liquidator, they do an auction. How did they do that? Was it just, you may not even know, I don't know.
They sent
but-
out, actually, somebody from Broadway was assigned to send out a letter of interest to, I don't even know how many companies, but companies doing business in Massachusetts building solar assets. I did see a copy of that letter that went out. There was a data room, they posted they had to register, but they posted all of the information on all the projects, so folks could go in, do their due diligence,
Because I'm just curious, if runner-up number 2 is still interested, where were they in the process for bidding for those projects?
They actually weren't aware of it, and by the time they were made aware by me,
Yep.
it was, the Tron Group was already in negotiations with ENRG. And so with Margaret's permission, because the contracts are public documents filed with the state, I provided a copy of the contracts to them, and as I indicated, they are still very interested in building the projects for you. As
Okay.
interested as they were 20 months ago.
Right.
Maybe we've got a fallback then.
Yep.
Okay. The questions with respect to this? We have homework due for Friday. Beth, thanks so much for the
Thank you
stellar
very
time,
much.
but the
Again,
night work.
I wish I could have been here with better news.
Well, maybe there'll still
It's
be a
been,
project.
it's been a very stressful couple of months
I
with these
bet,
projects.
yeah.
Well, we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in it, all of us did, and I hope they get built.
As do we. Thanks again so much for your work.
Thank you.
Drive
Thanks.
safe.
Drive safe.
Chief, we want to rename a street? We want to rename a street? Hungary Lane? Want to rename it Hungary Lane? Sesame. Hungarian Lane.
I like Sesame, huh?
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street, exactly. Said it twice.
Hungry Street?
Tom
So,
knows what street, he grew up there.
he grew up there.
He always thought it was South Silver anyways.
Not me.
So, we have
Town clerk schooled me better than that.
Silver Lane, of course, South Silver Lane. We have a request to revisit the naming, and it will not be Hungarian Street.
I'm requesting that we
Thanks, Beth.
talk about renaming it South Silver as the residents don't raise a lot of questions and fight back against it, because in my tenure as fire chief and probably beyond, that we've had different incidents on that street, and always the question arises from dispatchers or the incoming people that are coming to help us. Is that north or south?
Right, right.
And there's always confusion, and we've noticed, especially lately with the implementation of GPS and everything, it's already named South Silver on GPS and some other areas.
Okay.
I did a few checks with the Registry of Deeds online with some people's names that I knew that lived on that street, and throughout the years, they list everything that ever happened at that house, and somewhere on every one, that was listed as South Silver somewhere,
Somewhere.
Some or both.
some or both.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the process for us is to accept the recommendation, probably have some measure of public hearing, notify everybody associated with, right, due diligence with respect to numbering scheme, make sure there's no duplicates, those kinds of things, to roll a street name over.
Well, okay, so you want to call it South Silver Lane?
Correct.
Okay. You sent out it says in here,
Selectman's office sent out a Connect CTY.
to identify the road as Silver Lane, not South Silver Lane. And here, the fourth paragraph up, third paragraph. Until we can take the matter, I would suggest that we send our Silver Lane saying that the claims they need to a general location is Silver Lane, not South Silver Lane.
Relating to addresses, it is also
I
referred to.
think that was just a matter of fact for the time being
Right,
at that
right, at that point.
time.
It was to just let people know at that time,
We
make
weren't
sure they
trying
were
to tell
clear.
people that we were changing it right then and there. We were- I'm thinking that's what that Connect CTY was at the time.
Yeah, we have the record of it. It was just clarification to let people know if they have an emergency or whatever.
So it comes up, hold on. I hit the wrong entry.
So the process, the office has done some pre-work on getting it changed. We're not entirely sure if it requires town meeting, because it's already a taken public way. Clearly, people associated, living residents would have to come in and be able to weigh their concerns or support for thereof. And then some measure of duplicity. I guess the question about maps comes to mind.
Yeah.
And then street numbering comes to mind.
Yeah.
And then assessor's rule comes to mind, if there is any assessor's rule
I think
outside.
there, I made it clear to, when the chief and I were meeting in the assessor's office the other day, I made it clear that I think it's really important that the assessors are represented at a public hearing.
Sure. That makes perfect sense, actually.
Just to answer those questions.
Tom, what do you think?
I don't care. I really don't, as long as we call it one name.
Right.
Just be consistent.
This is predicated, this is catalyst for this, of course, is emergency response.
That's my concern.
Dispatched out to
Makes sense.
X. Where are we gonna go with it?
Right.
Okay.
Well, Google Maps says it's South Silver Lane, so.
Yes, it does.
Well, go just
Yeah,
like Google
there
to
you
it,
go,
right?
there you go,
Google
right?
says, right? So I guess one area, again, when it comes to mind is duplicity in numbering postal requirements, if there are any.
That's a good point. I don't know what.
So why don't we, well, discussion of the board, what's the consensus of the board? Again, I don't care if it makes it easier for EMS, that makes perfect sense. There's probably some legwork that we know we have to do. We know we have to invite the public, we absolutely have to invite
Right.
the public.
And it's not like you're completely changing the name. It's going
I like Hungarian
silver
made.
to sub, well, you know, or Sesame Street. We've had some other
Sesame
balloons floated up there, but you know what I mean?
Those would be
It's,
distinct names.
yeah, exactly. But, so, you know, right, and you're looking at it from EMS because you know, the first time if something happened,
Right.
and because there's a mix-up in the naming of it,
Right.
somebody's not gonna be happy.
Mhm. And I say as someone who grew up on X Road Extension, which is now X Road or X Road Extension, that it can be very daunting sometimes. Even
Yeah.
if it's a short connector between two roads, that whole EXT at the end of that name messes up a bunch. So I get it, having lived in one.
Even my street, the street sign, like I'm on Howard Hepburn, but the
Yep.
street sign always says Hepburn,
Hepburn.
and that confuses people
Right.
sometimes. Oh,
Good
wait a
point.
minute. So,
If we were to move forward with this, put a public hearing, first order of business, public hearing,
Yeah.
we'd probably do that in early April, right? We're mid-March now, there's a holiday associated with it, we have a budget agenda coming up, April 15 or 14?
April 14 there's a discussion about having a joint meeting with a neighboring community
Okay.
on,
now,
So
Fire.
maybe the week prior? Tom?
is there a minimum amount of time that we need for?
There's to notify the residents on Silver Lane, right? To
Yeah.
really make sense of it.
So procedurally, I have gotten a whole mixed bag of
Seven.
responses from various towns, but there are a couple of towns that have done this in the not-too-distant past, and they have done exactly what the chair is saying. They have notified the public of a public hearing. The board has held a public hearing. After the board makes a decision at the public hearing and sends notice to the residents are given 20 days for an appeal period. And then after the expiration of the 20-day appeal period, the town clerk is given notice, who then forwards that notice to the Registry of Deeds. That's basically the process that
Okay.
these other towns have
Okay.
followed. So,
Well,
with slight variations,
Tom?
but.
again, please note, I said, I don't care.
Oh.
Right, you won't know. And
Public
then-
hearing.
I'm saying that
Right.
I don't live on Silver Lane or South Silver Lane at the present time, so it doesn't affect me. My only thing is it affects EMS delivery services.
Right.
Now, we all know, and I guess this has to be addressed more to the chief, is that right now, when someone calls, if someone lives on North Silver Lane, there's no doubt that they're calling in North Silver
North
Lane.
Silver, right.
I don't think anybody in North Silver Lane identifies themselves as Silver Lane. So that means, that if someone calls EMS right now and looks for Silver Lane, says it's on Silver Lane or South Silver Lane, that, they're gonna go to one road.
Right.
So if there was confusion, there really shouldn't be confusion, because there's only one place they can go. Because they're not going to North Silver Lane.
Right.
It wasn't specified. That being said, so, right now, I don't know, and Bobby knows more than I do on this but I would think if you told up dispatch and said, look, we have a Silver Lane, can be called Silver Lane, South Silver Lane. If someone calls it in as Silver Lane or South Silver Lane, you're sending them to South Silver Lane. I guess we could do that, because it's not North Silver Lane.
It's really not for the guys like you and me that lived here all their lives. It's for
Yeah.
the newcomer, the new person that rents a house down there. or
No, I
whatever,
look at
the
it because,
Dispatcher that just started yesterday.
Yeah.
so I don't care, but and again, that's not meant as a bad thing, it's just, believe it or not, sometimes my goal is only to have a safe environment for people, one of the goals of a selectman, and then it's how to provide it. Now, we could have a mass of people in here that like you call that thing, and 50% go one way and 50% go the other
Sure.
way, what are you gonna say?
Public safety.
Right.
No, I'm saying we'll change the name to
Well, that's what I'm saying, public
Right.
safety.
Then it trumps,
50-50 is-
Nardowick's Lane.
Yeah.
No,
Hungarian,
no.
Hungarian Ave.
If 90% tell us that they don't want to change, then we're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Well,
Won't
and
hear
then,
about
and then
it
it gets back
anymore.
to the whole educational component.
Right.
well, yeah,
Right.
or 90%, so,
Notifying
but we always
Google
thought it
Maps.
was South Silver, what do you know?
When I looked it up, I went to the registry of deeds, because the registry of deeds is online.
It
And
is, yep.
my neighbor
Yes.
to my parents' house, and my parents' house, I think has been listed as Silver Lane, and been listed as South Silver Lane.
Yeah, I looked at both of them. the other
Right,
day.
and they both have been, entered that way.
Good point. How about if we target the 21st of April for a public hearing?
Right before town meeting?
Sure.
Why not?
It's public forum, it's easy, we just listen.
Chief, how much
Right,
work do you wanna do on
exactly.
this?
Oh, serious?
We need help.
We just listen. Well, are
We
we, are
need
we,
help.
Do we need to?
I'll hand deliver the,
You want a hand deliver?
There you go.
It's just a
Okay, you want-
handful.
I was-
81,
I
I
was-
think 81
we have
notices.
to have April
Tom
7th
and I'll bond that day.
or April 21. If we're gonna get it done prior to town meeting, which is a way of communicating. The current thinking is that it doesn't require a town meeting vote. Again, it's an accepted way, and it's a name change. What's that?
That's my understanding.
That's a current understanding, yep.
Well, the town layout is accepted at town meeting.
So again, a piece of homework that's
Which
continuing.
Silver Lane is a county road, of course.
Right.
It was a county way, so,
So Scott, before we schedule it, could we please would it be better to know exactly,
Or homework, yeah.
so what do we have to do?
Sure.
Can we have that down officially first?
Well, I was just gonna say, do we need to like, freshen up our procedures for a street renaming?
that's
At
a
all?
very good,
You know, cause if we have this many questions about.
Let's try one first.
I
Well,
would,
There's
it
a whole,
could- it could be
there's
the
a whole
trial.
host of other issues. There's a 7-mile-long Route 47 that's called 5 different names on one end to the other,
Yeah.
or 4 at least.
Right, so this will be a good,
It's like,
well, because
Experience.
that's what happened over time.
right, I
Yeah.
mean,
But that used to be dirt
roads
road.
changed,
Mhm.
but we're not going there.
Okay, so let's back up. If we know we have homework that has to be done, and we
Yep.
did, clearly there's some process steps that are required, and we know that we're coming into town meeting here at the end of April, is there any reason that we would not, let's assume it's not required town meeting action? Right? Under that assumption.
Yeah.
Can we do this in the first part of May?
And again, I would
So why
say,
not?
I would want,
we've lived this long,
Right,
you
right,
know what I mean?
right.
It's not like, you know, we're still at least doing
has
it.
anybody looked at our charter?
Not yet.
That's probably gonna do first, right?
Hmm.
I'm now thinking county layout, and I'm thinking, okay, this isn't a,
Well,
There's
I-
a-
the
there's some
county lay-
homework
the
that
county-
has to-
The county, the layout's not gonna change.
no, not the layout, but,
The layout
If it was on there.
the layout has to be accepted by town meeting, but the name, unless it's defined in our charter, then we'd go into applicable state law. If there's no state law that goes with that, then it's it's how
Oh,
we
do it.
establish the criteria,
Okay.
I think.
So Chief, we'll see if we can get this wrapped up for May.
Huh?
We'll see if we can get this wrapped up in the month of May. While you're here,
Hmm.
you have a summary of equipment, talk to SCEMS? And,
Most of the things on that list are stuff that's required through Office of Emergency Medicine
okay,
to have on an ambulance. And there's a couple of radios that go with it to communicate to either a dispatch center or to the 2 different hospitals that we go to.
okay.
That's basically all I can tell you about it.
So the list is driven down, or drilled down on, based on all of the equipment to operate the ambulance, including the ambulance, which is.
Including the
And
ambulance.
this is all part of the intermunicipal agreement, and that structure is to create a list for the 3 communities, and the list gets presented to the Board of Oversight or the delivery mechanism, whoever it is, director, and then accepted accordingly. As part of the IMA, as I recall, there was also the list was important in the event a municipality wanted to get out of SCEMS, and there was some dollar value, or they'd follow the list. Pretty easy. That said, do you need a motion of the board tonight to shift that list over as part of the
I
IMA?
would, yeah, I would like to do that. If the board could take a vote on the equipment list, it could then go right back to the Board of Oversight, because the IMA does direct the Board of Oversight to attach the list. So I have the form of motion, the recommended form of motion right here in quotes.
Okay. Chief, any reason we shouldn't do it?
No.
Okay. So we got a motion in front of us?
Yes, a motion to allow the equipment shown on the EMS capital worksheet to become part of the regionally based South County South County Emergency Medical Services operation in accordance with the terms of the intermunicipal agreement.
Tom,
Second.
you've been in second? Okay. We have a motion made in second with respect to discussion. You've been really right from the beginning, in particular you two guys, have been really point people for Sunderland's interest in this. And without any objection, this really is a step.
It's part of the
It's
process
part
to
of the
get the
process.
system up and running.
Okay. We have a motion made in second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Okay. One more thing while you're here.
Get your money's worth tonight.
I'm gonna, one more thing while you're here, Chief.
That was kind of like my phone call with you earlier. Thought I had only one thing to.
Been approached by a neighboring community, town of Leverett, about potentially exploring shared fire services.
Excellent idea.
There's some, back to homework, we always end up with homework, right? They have done a study themselves, and the study's been sent to our office and yourself. And I'm wondering if we're in a position to invite their board and their chief and interested parties down to have a conversation, to really explore our commonality and potential in at least the first meeting. What do you think about that?
No, I think it's a good idea. It's the shape of things to come, but, you know, there's certain things that, you know, maybe one person shared either part-time or full-time between the both towns could get a lot done. So there's some continuity of operations, and, you know, when they call the telephone number for whichever service, and the guy's going to do the inspection or going to help somebody up that fell, or whatever the case may be, you know, makes a lot of sense.
Tom, David? Again, this is a,
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Definitely. Right, and if it's not with Leverett, it's gonna be with somebody else, you know, odds have it, so, makes sense.
okay. Tom, what do you think? You've been a proponent of this for a couple of years now, talking about shared resources.
I think we're moving in the right direction. We do get typically more bang for our buck when we do things like this. I would hope that we would continue moving forward. You know, I mean, see where it takes us. I mean, we have not had a lot to do with Leverett in that respect officially. Unofficially, over the years, Leverett and Sunderland have done probably a number of things together. So it would probably be a good idea.
Want to ask town administrator about a meeting?
You can go-
I think, yeah,
You can go up see them, they came here last time. The last time they were here on,
On the road closing?
road closings.
yeah, I did have an initial conversation, and,
They live.
they're willing to come here. They would extend invitations to all of their people, everybody in Leverett who'd like to
Come
come.
bring them in.
Yeah, and I think we talked about, well, actually, I'm waiting to hear back on a possible date of April 14th.
If that works, then we can make sure that makes it to the agenda.
Okay.
Bring them in. If I could just revisit for 1 second, the name change, what I would recommend doing, Margaret,
Yes.
we have a letter here from members of the Tenney family,
Yep.
Tenney and Evelyn, and it goes back to how the road name was changed back in 1922. Probably I would go back and review the town meeting of 1922, 1923, and see if there was any type of action taken at town meeting.
Yeah, okay, 1922?
Well, that's what it says here. This letter, and it goes in about her father not liking the idea it was called Hungarian Avenue because there's a lot of other nationalities on that road. There was Lithuanian, Slavics, Polish, etc. He would say that the sand always looked like simmering lights. It was so started calling it Silver Lane. It has remained Silver Lane to this day. Only now we have North Silver Lane and South Silver Lane. The Tenney family are longtime residents of Sunderland. Now there's only two. One lives in Queen Creek, Arizona, and the youngest members are living in Ewa Beach, Hawaii.
Okay.
But
Can
the
we go
sand,
visit?
Yeah, I know.
I bet the
There
sand
you
is
go.
simmering out in Hawaii
Yeah,
too.
but-
A fact-finding mission to
Let's
Hawaii.
go talk to them out in Hawaii and see
Now
how
you-
that name came.
field trip.
Field trip.
After our meeting, FCAT, you need to come and tape it.
We're on.
So put that in the budget, and I bet you Sunderland
They'd probably
TV,
shut us down.
I bet you Sunderland TV will wanna take back
We'll
over
vote
the
for it.
filming responsibilities if we're going to Hawaii, huh?
We'll have to get a few GoPros so we can film from our surfboards.
So Margaret, I think I would go, I would,
What's your
I would-
town meeting results around 1922?
it says this letter should have been
Dip into
written
the
to you way
archives.
back in 1922 or
That's right.
1923.
this
For that
was
is the year that my father, so I would say back the 22 to 25, 1925.
Okay.
I'm guessing when 116 went in, that's when it got split into north and south probably, right?
116?
Yeah.
No.
No?
Was it? No, that was like in,
Amherst Road.
yeah.
Well,
Old Amherst continued on to Amherst Road,
Yeah.
and then the 116 part, that was like in,
was that
one
after
from the
flood?
intersection down to Old Amherst Road, that was like in the 60s or something,
Yeah.
right?
I gotta say, our ancestors weren't that creative when it came to naming. Like, a road goes to Amherst, it's Amherst Road, and then Amherst, that goes to Sunderland, it's Sunderland
You
Road.
don't wanna take the Amherst Road to go to Sunderland, do you?
Yeah, apparently not.
We can take the Hadley Road to get to River Road to
Yeah.
South Main Street to North Main
Exactly.
Street to Montague Road.
Oh, and that's right.
There's that great town line between Shelburne and Coleraine, where you're either on the Shelburne-Coleraine Road, or if you go 3 feet, you're on the Coleraine-Shelburne Road.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's like, this road, no, I'm on this
Shelburne
one.
Center, or are you in Shelburne Falls?
No, it's just, I think it's a great
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that's a,
Take it
Or
right
it
on
could
the,
be Buckland.
Or
that's,
Buckland.
that's town confusion, now that's a,
Well, you know, that is something that we should probably clear up at some
Alright.
point, though.
so town meeting,
Little mess.
right? We have that as well. Okay, so Chief, we got banged for our buck tonight. But we ended up with homework.
Yeah, Chief was
Motion to adjourn.
bucking on Friday night too.
That's right. Chief, you wanna weigh in on your SCEMS updates? Tom's gonna weigh in here in a little bit.
We picked a ambulance director, and this week we're gonna talk to him about a job and see if he wants to take it, which we assume he does.
Well, that's a great step forward, and all the work that you two in particular have done, as well as.
Hopefully he'll
many others.
be starting within a couple of weeks or so,
Perfect. All right,
Oh,
I would hope.
get it rolling, right? Literally.
He's got work to
well,
do.
the process is not quite that easy, because the Board of Oversight has to have a meeting
Then it goes to the town of
And
Deerfield.
then we have to
sign
refer it to the town of Deerfield, and the town of Deerfield Select Board then has to vote on it, so.
Okay.
When is that expected? Next, next meeting?
I told you, I'm not giving you no more dates yet.
Oh, okay,
Margaret, the
okay.
day
Dates
before,
have come
the
and
day
gone.
before town meeting.
Right, day before town meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
We have a lot of homework to do as well. Thanks so much, Chief, I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
How's your sister-in-law doing?
Better, she's in rehab and doing quite well, so.
I think someone's gonna have her that I know tonight. Yep.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Robert.
We have moments of March 3rd in front of us.
Motion.
The moments.
of March 3rd, I like
It
that.
sounds special.
Moments. FCAT captures the real time, we capture the moments.
Second.
All those in favor? 8-0, please. Okay, any board updates? Coming our way in, we just spoke briefly about the director's position.
There's a meeting tomorrow night for those interested to go to Frontier to listen to the Frontier budget.
Yes, public hearing at 6, right?
It starts at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Nice. David, anything?
Looks like they're coming along nicely on the town website design.
I saw
So we've
some
gone back and
emails.
forth over fonts, and now
Yeah.
we're, well, you know, it was kind of looking like it stepped out of 1995,
There you
you know,
go.
and like I was waiting for the dial tone for the modem to start kicking in, you know? But they've got that address, so
Nice,
looks like it's moving along.
good.
Our county selectmen's meeting is in the newspaper right here. I haven't had a chance to read the newspapers, but it was mentioned in there, yeah, about population, and I know one of our meeting topics at the end of the year is about the opiate issues in the region, and that seems to be gaining national attention now, so
Yeah.
kind of like the 70s all over again, only worse.
National attention,
Hmm.
good points. Margaret, any town administrator updates?
Yes, still working on budget. You'll have a look at that momentarily. We had department heads meeting this past week, and I'm gonna be meeting individually with department heads on the budget and revenue situation throughout this week. We also have received notice from Standard & Poor's that our bond rating has been increased several notches from an A to a AA minus.
Nice.
This reflects stability in our budget, our debt, our debt obligations. We have healthy cash reserves, so they note a number of things.
Is that
so
Moody's?
That,
Was
what
it
is that?
Moody's or Standard &
This is
Poor's?
Standard & Poor's.
Standard & Poor's.
Yeah, yep, so, better bond rating, that's a good thing. The PVTA, unfortunately, I've been, a little bit out of touch with the PVTA Advisory Board, activities, but there is a proposed, route service change. The South Deerfield route through Sunderland is actually gonna be going to the Whately Park and Ride. That's the proposal anyway, and there are gonna be hearings on the PVTA service changes in this area. The first one will be in Northampton on April 9th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Northampton Council Chambers office on Main Street. And then the second one will be on April 14th in Amherst at the Town Hall from 4 to 7 p.m. And the Town Hall in Amherst is on Boltwood Ave. So if anybody is interested in that particular fixed route change to South Deerfield, call our office for more specifics on that.
Is that, I wonder if the thinking is there is that it's a pivot toward the Connecticut River corridor,
I think, yeah, exactly.
Or-
And
or
the up and down.
getting that
Commuting.
northwest and then east, north-south and then east-west tie.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually want to get a little more information on this. I wish I had been at that meeting, I just couldn't make it. But if they're actually proposing changing the South Deerfield route altogether, that could change Sunderland's paratransit
Right.
to the South County Senior Center, and that wouldn't be beneficial
No, I'm
for
sure they're
Sunderland
not
if they
gonna,
change it, if they change the fixed route.
They're not gonna remove the they're not gonna.
That's what I wanna clarify.
I don't think that's what they would do, Margaret. I think
Okay,
they would just
because it
extend.
says, well, yeah, okay, because, I mean, they say change routing in South Deerfield only, and the route would be to service Sunderland Road to Whately Park and Ride. I just want clarification,
I
because
would
I don't
clarify,
want,
yeah.
I just don't want the paratransit, the people, people's ability to use paratransit to the senior center to be
Well,
jeopardized.
if we move the senior center over to the Whately Industrial Park, it's a good thing.
That would be, yeah, that would be a benefit. That would actually be.
Better off, Margaret.
That would actually be a good thing. And the only other
Tip is
thing I
good.
have is, Sunderland is participating in the Housing Rehab Grant Program through CDBG. And the Housing and Redevelopment Authority is looking for members for a citizen advisory committee for this particular, program. So they're looking for a representative from, the participating towns, Conway, Sunderland, Shutesbury, and Bernardston. So if any Sunderland resident is interested in being on a citizens advisory committee, contact the selectman's office. And
Are
that-
those two things on Channel 15?
No, actually, this
Maybe
just,
we should
this just
put
came,
those out
yeah,
there.
this
It
just
makes
came,
great sense, actually, to get that on
Today.
Channel 15.
so.
And especially the bus thing, because having lived in the MBTA area, when they change routes,
And you're waiting and waiting,
right,
right?
where to go? Oh, well, that got changed. You find out when they come and post the new,
Right, the sign comes down, or
Notice.
the notice goes up, yeah,
Yep.
good point. Personnel committee recommendations, we kind of bundled this last week,
Oh.
with some of our budget capital discussion.
yes. It's that time of year again, budget, and we trotted out our formula, and, plugged in the numbers, and we got our little adjustment here of, it was just under 1%, we did round it up to 1%.
So the math put you at whatever, point something.
Yeah, it was, right, and then we thought, because one of the, rounding was a little easier, and we thought, we put in for a little more last time, we had to bump it back, so we figured we'll round it up this time, so.
Okay.
So we end up with a 1%, and just for folks too, this covers the non-union and non-teachers, which doesn't leave a lot really left.
I think the list is
Is it on the
I think
back?
it might be on the back.
It might be, yeah, let's
Yeah,
see.
the-
Yes, here we go, yep. Is that?
Yeah, those would
part-time
be the
firefighters, yes, yep.
totals.
So it basically covers, the highway, to make it easier, the highway department, fire department, town clerk, police clerk, fire chief, town administrator, right? No, doesn't cover you, though.
Well, it doesn't, except that my contract says the same, well, I don't wanna get
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
rate or whatever.
right, okay, yep, gotcha. So-
Similar to, yeah.
So no teachers and no police, in a
Right.
nutshell, that's,
The punchline is a 1% adds $5,092
yes, to the bottom
in
line.
requests.
Yep.
Okay. Tom, any discussion?
Nope.
Okay. You see that, well, thanks for the work on that, Dave, and again, we're gonna continue to plug these budget numbers in as we go down this path. Our current draft is about $7.147 million, which is actually skewed a little in that it's a big reduction in our debt service, but it's actually down from last year. Okay. We have a draft capital form in front of us, and we can take that, digest it, and revisit it next week. Margaret, I have here on the calendar in front of us that we have to have on March 10th, motions to include articles. Today being the 10th, are we gonna jeopardize, motions to include articles if we do that next week?
No, you're not.
Okay.
We'll see a couple policies.
This would be kind of an initial going through the
Right.
warrant. There's a draft version of the warrant that's
Yep.
now available. There's still
Okay.
work to do on it, but you'll
Okay.
have it again next
I
week.
just wanna make sure we're not missing a date on the calendar. Okay.
Well, what's missing on this calendar is your Monday, March 17th meeting. I just noticed
It
that.
says the Thursday, the 13th, right?
It says Thursday the 13th, but your regular meeting of Monday, March 17th is missing here. I'll have to plug that in and give you
Oh.
another opportunity to review the warrant.
Perfect. Thanks so
There you
much.
go.
Okay. We have two draft policies in front of us. The first here is a mobile food vendor, i.e. food trucks, hot dog carts, et cetera. Now, we've had a couple over the past handful of years. Some of them have been less mobile than others. I remember there's a, this guy ended up doing a lot of work in Montague, actually, but came to us for a
The
license.
hot dog guy,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah, I remember
There's
that.
a guy on Main Street in Greenfield.
That was Main Street in Greenfield, right? Very interesting. So we have in front of us the draft combination of applications and requirements, and then some of the town and renewal requirements. And if we could go over these, digest these, no pun intended, okay, every pun intended, and bring this back to our next meeting as well. This just came out as we have pending, we have some pending applications or some interest in applications here in the town. So let's see if, not unlike film as we did a year ago, we can come up with a comprehensive policy that protects the town as well as the applicants. There's no surprises.
Is there, I'm just,
This is a very initial draft. We've taken a lot of these protections from other towns' policies. As it stands right now, there are no regulations for food carts in Sunderland. It seems as though we're getting a food cart application every year. So this is to try to protect the town with regard to public safety. It gets into disposal of trash, hours of operation. The board, of course, could decide to either adopt policy or could decide not to allow food carts in town. So it's just something to consider, to try to be proactive.
do we need to make any distinction between food cart and like a taco truck, for instance, like an actual truck?
Up at the top of this policy, it attempts
Okay,
to
so it does-
define,
it does
it
them.
attempts
Okay,
to
good.
define it, so you definitely want to take a look at
Yeah, I have
that.
to read that. And then I'm thinking, if we haven't addressed it too, we might need to address, how mobile a mobile thing is, or not mobile, as the case may be.
Right,
In other words, if you're on mobile, you should be moving somewhat.
regularly, and
Yes.
not be parking overnight, and, yeah.
Just to make that clear that,
Okay.
Not hooking into water, sewer, all these
Right,
things should
exactly,
be
right.
included, yeah.
right, where do you step over that line between being mobile and, the
Seasonal.
Bedouin type versus, okay, now we've camped out permanently.
Points. So that's one draft in front of us, again for review. There's a draft also of Corey policy and procedures in front of us.
This is actually required by statute. Chapter 6, the Corey reform actually requires that an employer who's conducting 5 or more Corey checks in a year, and we easily do that, must have a policy in place. And this policy just complies with statute and the regs that go with it.
Is this time sensitive?
The Corey policy, well,
We
you can
bring it
certainly
back next
review it.
week.
It's
You-
here
You
for
wanna
your
bring it
review.
back next,
Yeah,
Please.
I think it's important to bring
Yeah.
it back.
Yeah,
And then,
like usual, you bring it forward,
Yes.
review it, and then we,
review it, yeah.
Okay. All right, next up for us is Monday, March 17th.
no, an appointment.
oh, yes,
I'm sorry, you're right. I did it last week too. I checked that box.
We don't have a meeting on March
No,
17th, according to the calendar.
Yeah, there's a registrar's appointment here.
I highly recommend that the board appoint, this is to the Board of Selectmen from Wendy Hool, Town Clerk, Master in Law, Chapter 51, Section 15, Registrar Appointment. I highly recommend that the board appoint Donald Patterson as Registrar. Mr. Patterson will represent the Republican Party. This is a 3-year appointment, which will expire April 1st, 2017. Motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is the appointment of Donald Patterson as read. Recommendation of the town clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Give me 0, please. I had that way up in here.
I know you did.
Mention something on the town meeting calendar. Last week, there was a discussion about combining annual and special town meetings.
Yep.
And last year, the town, for the first
that.
time in many years, I guess, did combine the 2 town meetings. It was based on town council's recommendation, and so your town meeting calendar that you have before you this week does actually combine the meetings into a single annual town meeting.
So should we take action tonight to cancel the announced special town meeting that we did last week?
You could cancel.
May as well be
If
official
you'd
and
like to
then we
proceed with a single
Yep.
town
We're gonna
meeting.
take the single town, right now we have, last week we established a date and location for both.
Motion to rescind.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to rescind the scheduled special town meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. And again, that was a way of covering any eventuality.
We dotted our i's and crossed our t's
There you
now.
have it.
Yep.
Okay, so no special town meeting, just a regular town meeting,
The
7
regular,
PM.
It's still special,
It's
the all-in-one, it's
special.
special.
you know?
All right. Any other discussion? If not, is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion's made and seconded.
Second?
All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Call us out 8:25, Tom?
Roger that.
Thanks, FCAT.